Hey everyone, and welcome to this vlog on skill and capacity in the weight room, where we are going to look at the back squat and the snatch. First, we're going to look at the back squat. I will present to you John, who's lacking skill, and Alex, who is limited by capacity. We're going to start with Alex. In the clip, we can see Alex performing a back squat assessment using a stick. Notably, he has a tendency to lean forward a lot. With the yellow line, we can see the projection of the barbell on the floor, and we can see that the barbell is tracking in front of the toes, while his knees remain behind. We also tested his body weight and goblet squat, and we can see that the same pattern occurs in all exercises. Alex's inability to move his knees forward could be linked to some joint restriction, so we tested his mobility around his hip and ankle joints. In the clips, Alex is performing a band an assisted and an assisted leg raise to evaluate his passive and active hip mobility, and an ankle mobility assessment. From these assessments, we can see that he is lacking in hamstring flexibility and is not able to lift the leg above 60 degrees without flexing the knee. He is also lacking ankle dorsiflexion. He can't touch the wall even with the foot 1 cm away from it. In this picture, he is performing a quad stretch, and again we can see that he is restricted in mobility. All these mobility restrictions are a common issue in the general population when performing a squat. These capacity limitations don't allow Alex to execute a proper squat, so in order to work on his skills, it is necessary to improve his mobility. To address these issues in the short term, we used a wedge to elevate his heels, so he won't need much ankle dorsiflexion to perform the squat, and we can see that his form has improved. He can maintain a more upright torso, and the system center of mass remains over the base of support. Also, his knees can travel more forward, allowing him to keep his center of mass above his midfoot, and he can also maintain good control of the movement. For Alex, the long-term solution is to improve his range of motion at the hip and ankle, so Alex is performing daily stretches and mobility exercises. In particular, he's doing hamstring, gastrocnemius, soleus, and quad stretch, alongside ankle dynamic mobilization. He can also add a distraction to improve his ankle mobility drills. We then have John. In the clip, we can see John performing a back squat with a barbell. John is struggling to maintain an upright chest as he is lacking some upper back mobility, but this is not a major limitation as we can see that he is able to raise his chest when instructed. The main issue is that John isn't very stable while performing the movement. As we will see later for the overhead squat, this is a common pattern with John as he can't properly maintain the center of mass over the midfoot. To develop better stability in the bottom position, I asked John to perform pose squats with the barbell. After he descended into the bottom position, he held it for 3 seconds, focusing on feeling the weight on the midfoot. After a set of pose squats, he performed some weighted squat, and we can see that his form is much more stable than before. Also, his depth has improved, as the improved stability allows John to access a larger range of motion. In order to improve this pattern in subsequent sessions, we decided to include a set of pose squat as a warm-up before John's working sets, so he can develop better balance in the movement pattern. We analyzed John and Alex's back squat. John was limited by skill, as he wasn't able to maintain stability of his center of mass over the base of support, while Alex was limited by lower body mobility. Both athletes present capacity and skill limitations, but one of his preponderant, so we need to address that first. Once the main limitations were addressed, we could see an improvement in technique, which allowed the athlete to lift more safely and heavier. We can then move on to the snatch. For this movement, I'm going to introduce Lauren. We will analyze John's snatch, which is limited by skill, while Lauren is lacking capacity. We're going to start with Lauren. In the clip, we can see Lauren performing a full snatch with the dowel. It is possible to note some skill issues, as she is new to the exercise, but the main limitations for her is upper body strength and shoulder stability once the barbell is overhead. I got Lauren to perform an overhead squat using a dowel, and we will see that she can maintain good form. There is a small arch on her back as she can maintain the dowel over the base of support, and it is tracking just behind the line of the ears, indicating good shoulder mobility. In this next clip, we can see Lauren performing an overhead squat with the barbell. It is very easy to see that she struggles to maintain good form. In this frame, we can compare the difference in knee alignment with the toes, yellow line, and the barbell projection on the base of support, red line. In the loaded condition, both these projections fall farther out in front of the toes, and she also loses contact of the heels with the floor. Also, Lauren struggles to maintain the barbell slightly behind the line of the ears. We can see from her facial expression that even holding the empty bar above the head requires a great effort. The long-term plan for Lauren is to increase her upper body strength to complete a full lift, incorporating some vertical press exercises. In the meantime, we can still work on power using some derivatives. One option Lauren has is a single arm dumbbell snatch. We can see that she is much more comfortable with this exercise. She still needs some work on her technique as she doesn't reach full triple extension, but she is much more comfortable in holding the dumbbell over her head. Another derivative that we can implement are snatch pulls. We can see that also in this case she has good form if we take out the catch phase and the overhead squat. She is able to achieve good triple extension and also manages to keep the barbell close to the body. This can be a good derivative to implement as we can add load without stressing the catch phase and the overhead squat, and it allows us to work on different power qualities. We then move on to John. We can see his full snatch in this clip. John is also new with this exercise and there are some flaws in his form. He has some capacity limitations as he is not very mobile in his upper back, but his main limitations are all skill related. First of all, we can see that in performing the exercise, John can't achieve triple extension at the end of the second pull, which is quite evident in this frame when the barbell makes contact with his thighs. Second, his overhead squat is not very stable and he can't maintain the barbell over the base of support, which is a deficiency he was showing during the back squat as well. He also struggles to link all the phases of the snatch together. Starting by addressing John's overhead squat, we isolated that movement. We also added a pause at the bottom in the first set performed to give him feedback of correct weight displacement on the feet. The improvements as he goes on with the reps are evident, as he is developing better feeling. Since John was struggling to link all the phases of the snatch together, we implemented a top-bottom strategy. After the overhead squat, John performed the snatch balance. In the video we can see John performing the movement. In this particular clip it is possible to see John's limitation in his upper back mobility as he struggles to keep the chest up when catching the double overhead. John is also trying to lift the barbell with his upper body instead of dropping under the bar, so we work on getting under the barbell instead of pressing it overhead. The cue we used in this case was to get the fudge under the bar, to make him faster drop under the barbell. After the snatch balance, we introduced a dop snatch at different heights, chest, belly and hip, to work on the catch. We can see that in all these cases John can drop under the double quite fast. We then introduced a snatch from the power position. In this particular case, we can see that John struggles to extend his hips when trying to get under the barbell. He was showing this in the full snatch and we're going to address this issue in the next section. After working the catch phase, the progression would be to work on the second pull, transition and first pull by introducing snatches from the power position, snatches from the knee and then the full snatches respectively. We also addressed his triple extension. As mentioned before, John has a tendency to try to lift the barbell with the upper body instead of generating force from the legs. So first I got him to perform jumps with the barbell with a snatch grip, maintaining his arm straight. We can see that in this case he can achieve more triple extension as it is evident from this frame. We also performed some kettlebell swings to isolate the hip extension movement. I then asked John to perform a hang snatch pull and his form is much better in this case. He can achieve more extension and also manages to keep the barbell close to the body. Nevertheless, after a couple of reps, he reverts back to his habit of using his upper body too much, so we will have to spend more time to consolidate this movement. We saw two athletes, John and Lauren, performing the snatch. Both athletes were lacking skill and capacity, but one of these two was predominant. Lauren was lacking capacity, specifically upper body strength, and this didn't allow her to perform the full snatch with proper form. Once she increases her upper body strength, she will probably show better technique. On the other hand, John is quite strong. Even if he's lacking some upper back mobility, he doesn't have many capacity limitation, but is mainly limited by skill. Even if the skill and capacity limitations can be present at the same time, as it was for the back squat, there is one more detrimental to performance than the other. Anyway, for athletes, we can always implement some derivatives of Olympic lifts in the program to improve power generation capabilities, while working on technique improvements. We analyzed 4 different executions of 2 lifts. The common theme across all of them was the presence of both skill and capacity limitations in each athlete. It is important for the practitioners to address these issues. First, to reduce the injury risk while performing those lifts, and second, to use the same lifts to improve strength or power qualities. This improvement will translate in improved sport performance as the development of correct movement patterns diminishes injury risk, but also allow the athlete to lift heavier and develop strength.